So hello there everybody, Tim here from Lessons on the Web again, the YouTube channel dedicated to teaching the world piano and music. And today, of course, I have another great lesson for you today, and we are going to be talking about chords, more specifically major chords, minor chords, diminished chords, augmented chords, and some of the seventh chords as well. So if you don't know anything about chords, or if you need a brush up on what these chords look like, and sound like, then this is the lesson for you. And one thing I want to tell you before we start is if at any time you feel like you're learning something, why not give a like? Because that really helps other people know that they can learn from this lesson as well. So let's get started. Here we go. So we're going to talk about chords today, as I mentioned. So what do you need to know about chords, or what is a chord if I had to define it? Well, a chord is made up of two or more notes at the same time. That's a really simple way to put, what a chord is. Generally, chords will have anywhere between, it's really rare to have a chord with only two notes, but that can happen, and I'll explain later. But generally, they have three notes. They're called triads. A four-note chord, believe it or not, is usually called a seventh chord. Usually, I mean, there are exceptions to this. But, you have a three-note chord, all evenly stacked, and then you have a four-note chord called a seventh, and that's because the distance between the bottom and the top is 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that's why it's called a seventh chord, in case you're ever confused. But the triad, our three-note chord, there are a bunch of types. There's the major triad, which sounds happy. So I'm going to draw a major triad here. Probably the easiest one to know is C major, and it looks just like that. So if you play that chord, it sounds, how does it sound? It should sound bright and happy, kind of cheery. It's not going to sound, dark and sad. It's not going to sound tense or like kind of on edge. It's going to have a very stable, soothing sound to it. Okay, so now, here's the thing, is you can't just play all three white keys anywhere on the keyboard and have it be a major chord. If you notice those two I played right there, just by moving all three notes up one, automatically changes what kind of chord it is. Now, why does that happen? Why aren't they all just white keys? That would make it really easy, right? Well, the reason behind that is that the piano does not have a black key between every single white key. There are two places where on the piano where there isn't a black key, or isn't a what we could call it a half step in between the two notes. Where are those two places? So I'm going to pick out one for you. You have B and C, right? No black key in between there. What is the other spot? So think about it for a second. The other spot is between E and F. So keep note of those two places, because you always have to watch out for where you're counting up notes. You'll see what I mean in a second. So anyway, to make a major chord built on any note, if you don't know, if you look back at my previous lessons, I explained half steps and whole steps. Just going to do it real quick. Half step is just going up to every single note. So you go from C to C sharp. That's a half step. You go to C sharp to D. That's a half step. It's just the smallest amount of movement you can make on the piano. A whole step, if I mention a whole step during this lesson, is just two half steps put together. And then actually a whole step above E, this is why I said be careful of the distance between E and F. That's actually going to be an F sharp instead of an F, because remember, it's two half steps. Anyway, so when you're trying to figure out a major chord built on any note, it's easy with C, right? Because I just told you what it is. It's C, E, and G all at the same time. Well, that's a major chord because if you look at the distance between the first note, first of all, every triad has what we call a root, a third, and a fifth. So the distance between the bottom two notes, or the root and the third, is, so you play the note you're on, and then you start counting. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives you your second note. To find the last note in a major triad, you play that note that you're on, the second note called the third, and then you go up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. And then you play all 3 notes together and you get yourself a major triad. The white key major triads you want to be aware of are C major, F major, G major, and, well, there's really only 3. So C major, F major, and G major. It also helps to memorize what the chords are as well, because that will help you play them much more effectively. All right, so we're going to move on. So let's say we have a D chord, right? How are we going to make a D major chord? Well, you play D, right? And then what do? Remember, the next step is to count up 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember not to count the note that you already played. That's the most important thing. Because if you do that, you will get the wrong answer. Anyway, so you go on to the next note. We have to find our last note, right? So you go to the note we just played in the middle, and then what you do is you count up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. So we have an A there. So you have D, F sharp, and A. Okay, that would look like this. So we need a sharp in there. And in case anybody's wondering, the little software I'm using here is called Staff Pad. I get that question quite a bit. So that's what it would look like. It looks a little different, mainly because we need 4 half steps between the root and the third, and then 3 half steps between the third and the fifth. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to jot down some notes about our major triad. So I'm just going to draw a major triad, and you have, right, so this little bracket is just the distance or the interval between that, and this first one's going to be 4 half steps. So you have to go up 4 half steps between the root and the third, and then between the third and the fifth, how many were there? There were only 3 this time, right? So you have a root, remember, a third, and a fifth. The distance between the root and the third is 4 half steps, and the distance between the third and the fifth is only 3 half steps. So that's the main thing you want to keep in mind, because say you have, let's do another example, you have your F sharp major triad. You play F sharp, and then what do? What is that next step? You go up, I'm going to circle it, 4 half steps. So you play the F sharp, and then you go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's your third, your second note rather. Then you want to go up how many? 1, well, you play the note you just did, that's the main thing, and then you go 1, 2, 3. And you just play all 3 notes you had at the same time, and that's your major triad. How do you know if you have the right answer or not? Well, a major triad sounds bright and happy, like I said. If it sounds sad, or it sounds scary, or if it sounds crazy, then chances are you're not playing the right chord. So that's a major triad. You have 4 and then 3. Now we're going to do a minor triad. And I mentioned before, just briefly, that a minor triad has a sad sound, right? So that's how you'll know you have the right answer. Let's play a C minor triad, right? So we're going to play C. You're always going to play the name of the letter of the chord that you're on first. So if you're playing a C chord, you're going to play C first. If you play an E chord, you're going to play E first. It works just like that. So you play the C, and then you go up how many, right? 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then from there, this middle one, you go up how many? 1, 2, 3. Well, that was for the major, actually. I want to explain the minor. So the minor is the opposite. It's 3, so you play the C, you go 1, 2, 3. So it's C, E flat, and then from the middle note, the third, to the fifth, the top note, you have to count up 4, because it's swapped now. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's your minor triad. If you have your major triad already, you can take a shortcut, because the only difference between a major triad and a minor triad is one note, the middle note, called the third. If you want to turn a major triad into a minor one, you lower the third by a half step, and that gives you your minor. But say they just give you, somebody tells you to play an E flat minor chord, right? You might be freaking out, but don't freak out. the first thing you want to do is play what? An E flat. And then you want to count up, well, we're talking minor now, so you only want to count up 3, not including the note you just played. So you want to go 1, 2, 3. And then from there, you want to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how it works. So you have E flat, G flat, and B flat. Does it sound right? Yeah, it sounds minor, right? It doesn't sound happy. It sounds sad. So let me just write the C minor triad for us. And what are our notes, right? So we got a C, and then the difference between the bottom note and the next note, the root and the third, there are only 3 half steps, and then between the top 2 notes, there are now 4. Let me write that a little bit better. There we go. So there's our minor triad. So a lot of us know about those already. Okay. I do remember you, Diamond Minor. Glad to have you with us. All right, and then like I mentioned before, I just want to sneak this in here. If at any time during a lesson you feel like you're learning something, why not give it a thumbs up? Let others know that you can learn from this lesson, or that they can learn from this lesson as well. But let's continue. So now you have another kind of triad. And I'm just going to write it out. Oops, not that one. So this time, I'm going to have a C major chord. I'm going to turn it into a C minor by lowering that middle note by a half step, right? That's how you do it. And we had the formula of 3 half steps and then 4 half steps to get our answer. Now I'm going to throw you a little curveball, and I'm going to flat the top one as well. So you have C, and then you go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you go up 3 more, 1, 2, 3. And this is a scary type of chord. It is the diminished chord. Diminished triad more accurately. But people use chords and triads interchangeably. I do often. Okay. So, again, you play the note, and then you go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you go up how many again? 3, right? Remember not to include the note you just played. That's the most important thing. And then you go 1. Well, I'll just move this. So you go 1, 2, 3. Play all 3 notes at the same time, and you got it. One thing you want to be aware of is that there is only one all-white key diminished chord, and that's the B diminished. A lot of people want to say that's a minor chord because it's all 3 white keys. They think that means either major or minor. But B is the only one that's diminished on all 3 white keys. Why is that? Well, remember that our formula, you play the B, you go up 3 half steps, and then you go up 3 more. And that just happens to give you B, D, and F, all 3 of the white keys. Okay, actually, let's play a few diminished triads together. So you have, let's say, F sharp diminished. So what is the first step I'm going to do? I'm going to count up 3 half steps? No, that's not the first step. You want to play F sharp, since that's the name of the chord we're on. Then from there, not including that note you just played, you go up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to have A as our middle note, and you're going to go up 3 more. 1, 2, 3. And there you go. Does it sound correct? Well, yeah, it does. It sounds scary and spooky. So you know you have the right one. And then, like I said, you can always check the spacing as well. All right. So hopefully everybody's doing great. We're going to move on to the augmented chord now, where you have C. Let me change the pen back for us. That'd be helpful. You have C, E, G. Almost there. There we go. C, G. Well, that's a major chord, right? We already talked about that one. All right, so I wanted to get into major first because I want to show you how this next chord works. So what you do to get to this chord is you take your major chord and then you raise the top note by a half step. If you're in a minor chord, you have to raise both the middle one and the top one to get there. But if you're a major already, all you got to do is move the top one. So what is our distance now? Well, we have C, right? And then remember that the similarities between this augmented chord and our major chord are 4 half steps, right? Because the root and the third are the same. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4 again, and there you go. And then this time, you're going to have how many more between the E and the G sharp we need? Well, let's count. So here you go. Am I going to count the E as number 1? No, not going to count the E as number 1. That's the note I just played. You count after the E. So you're going to go 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how many half steps we have. So this time, it's 4 and 4. And we call that an augmented triad. Okay, so if you want to play a couple of augmented triads on the keyboard, you play the note you need. So let's say we have a C sharp augmented. I'm making it real tough. So you play C sharp. That's your first step. You go up 4, not including the note you just played. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you go 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. So a little practice assignment for you for the next video, or just for this video really, is one thing you want to do is go through this list of triads. You know, the major triad having the distance of 4 and 3, the minor triad having the distance of 3 and 4, the diminished triad of having the distance of 3 and 3. I didn't write that down. Here we go. 3 and 3. And the augmented triad of having 4 and 4. What I want you to do is for each of these, pick a random note. So let's say we're going to do E flat, and then we're going to do the first one. We're going to do E flat major. Right there. And you're going to count up, what, 4 half steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3. 1, 2, 3. It might take you a little bit more time than what it takes me to do it, but that's what you want to do. You just want to pick a random note, A, then you want to make a major triad out of it. And you want to go through and you want to do this for every one of these triads, these main 4 types. And that's really how you get better at it. And over time, you'll start to memorize what these chords look like. So you know right away, E flat major, boom. A flat diminished, boom. D minor, boom. You'll know them instinctually and right away. It'll make it a lot easier. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 7th chords. But this is just kind of an introduction to these chords. So let's do a major 7th chord. Remember a 7th chord I said in the beginning of the lesson has how many notes? It doesn't have 7, it has 4. So what you do is you play the bottom note. You play a major triad actually. So we have C, E, and G. And then what you do is you pick your starting note. So there's C, and you keep it held where it is, but what you want to do is go up an octave above that, play that C, and then you want to lower that by a half step. And you want to play all 4 of those notes. And that gives you your major 7th. So remember that last note we're adding, the 7th, it's called a major 7th, by the way. You take the bottom note, you go up an octave, to the next C, or whatever note it happens to be, and then you go only down a half step. That's the most important part. So our distance now is, remember, 4, 3, because that's how the major chord works, and then how many more? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 4, 3, 4. And a major 7th chord has like kind of a dreamier sound to it. So 4, 3, 4. That's how you make your major triad or major 7th chord. And again, you want to pick like random notes and figure out how to do it from there. So you're going to pick, let's say D, right? First, I'm going to figure out what a D major chord is. You can remember that from earlier in the lesson. And then what you do is, what do I do next? I go up, I have D, right? I'm going to go up an octave, hit this D, and then go down a half step. And that gives me my last note. Or you can just, do the formula, figure out the major scale, and then go up 4 more from the top note, the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now every chord has a root, a 3rd, a 5th, and a 7th. And in this case, a major 7th. And like I said, it has a dreamier sound. Okay, now we're going to do what we call a dominant 7th, which is actually pretty easy. You take your same major chord, and then all I have to do to make a major 7th into a dominant 7th is lower the top note or the 7th by half step. Now we have the same thing, a root, a 3rd, a 5th, and a 7th. But now the 7th is now a whole step away from the octave. Or what you can think about it is this way. Use the formula to figure out what the major triad is. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. And then you go up only 3 more from there, from the 5th. 1, 2, 3. And a dominant 7th chord has a very bluesy type of sound to it. Okay, so hopefully everybody's having a good lesson here, following along very nicely. So remember that we're just going to go over the 2 types of 7th chords again that we did, and then later on to conclude the lesson I'll go over the triads. 7th chord has 4 notes, and for a major 7th chord the distance is 4 half steps between the bottom and the middle note, or the root and the 3rd we call it. It has 4 half steps between the 3rd and the 5th. And then it has 4 half steps between the 3rd and the 7th, we call it. And then the dominant, remember, I'll write this in as well. This time we have 4 like before. Now we have 3 half steps. And this time we only have 3. So now it's 4, 3, 3 going up from the bottom. Remember that major 7th sounds dreamy. Dominant 7th sounds bluesy. Whenever I play the B flat blues, like I do during the stream sometimes, the arpeggio, or like the little bass pattern I play with my left hand, centers around this dominant 7th chord. That's why it has a very bluesy type of sound. Now we're only going to talk about 1 more 7th chord tonight. There are 2 more beyond this. There's actually more than that, but 2 main ones beyond this. But I'm going to give you this last one because I think this is enough information for one lesson. So we're going to have the same chord we had before. We're going to just draw a dominant 7th chord, remembering that you pick your note, you go up 4 half steps, then you go up 3, and then you go up 3 more, bump, bump, bump. Now the next one here is called a minor 7th. There's only 1 note we need to change to make this dominant 7th into a minor 7th. And that is your 3rd. You're going to move it from an E to an E flat. So now you have a root. You're going to go up to your 3rd. Only 3 half steps. You're going to go up 4 half steps. And then you're going to go up 3 more. So it's 3, 4, 3. Before we had 4, 3, 4. And then 4, 3, 3. And now we have 3, 4, 3. All right, and this is the minor 7th. The minor 7th is a strange one because it doesn't sound as tense as you would expect for a minor chord. And a lot of students ask me that. Why doesn't that sound like as minor and as sad as some of the minor triads do? Well, you play the whole chord, right? You have, so say we have the minor 7th here. You have C, E flat, G, and B flat. and you take out the bottom note, and you play E flat, G, B flat. Well, just by the sound of that, what does that sound like to you? It sounds like a major chord, right? That's an E flat major chord. You can count out the half steps if you want, but you can take my word for it. So the top of the minor 7th chord is actually a major chord. Kind of weird. And the bottom part of it is a minor chord. So it has a very mixed sound, but it's very good for jazz and blues and things like that. Just like the dominant 7th chord is, but this is used probably more in jazz. Just because it has more of a conflicting, not in a bad way, but more of a mixed sound to it. So, just to reiterate everything we talked about today, I know it was a lot. You have your major triad made up of a root, a third, and a fifth. You have your minor triad, again made up of root, third, and fifth, but this time we lower the third. So before, when we have 4 half steps and 3 half steps, now it's the other way. It's 3 and then 4. Diminished, if you have a minor chord already, you lower that top note a half step, and that gives you your formula of 3 and 3. That's a scary sounding chord. Augmented, so when you take a major chord basically, and you raise the top by a half step, and now our distance is 4 and 4. Major 7th, which is our dreamy type of chord, you have 4, then 3, then 4, and that's your dreamier 7th chord. Remember that a 7th chord has 4 notes and not 7. You have your dominant 7th chord, where basically you take your major 7th chord, you lower it a half step, and now your distance is 4, 3, 3. Last one we talked about today was the minor 7th. So basically you take a minor triad, you add basically a minor 7th, so our distance is 3 between this one and this one, 4 between the 3rd and 5th, those two, and then 3 between the 5th and what we call the 7th. So this basically wraps up our discussion of chords today. Remember that if you like this lesson, give it a thumbs up. Let others know that it's a quality lesson as well. And there's one more thing I want to tell you. So if you check in, if you're interested in learning more about lessons on the web, more about chords, more about playing piano, be sure to check the links in the description, because they are filled with valuable links for you to, like I said, enrich yourselves to learn even more about this kind of stuff. So this has been Tim from Lessons on the Web, the channel dedicated to teaching the world piano and music. Thanks. It's been a great day and a great lesson, and I will talk to you in the next one. Thank you so much.